I am Brooke Lawson, 29 years old. I built my career from nothing after being betrayed by my own family. In college, I lost my scholarship and was suddenly faced with a $10,000 tuition bill. I called my mom, my voice trembling, begging for help. She only replied coldly, "We can't afford it." I clenched my teeth and worked 2 jobs, survived on instant noodles, and barely slept. Then I discovered the truth. My parents had spent $100 to pay off my brother's gambling debts, justifying it by saying he needed a fresh start. I received nothing, only bitterness and humiliation. That betrayal ignited a fierce determination in me. I walked away from my family, vanished without a trace, and started over in a distant city. 5 years later, I returned, and this time they were the ones forced to bow their heads and face the reality that I was no longer the weak child they once dismissed. I had changed, and now the power was in my hands. Have you ever experienced the deep pain of being let down by your family? Share your story in the comments. Growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, my family looked like the perfect American picture. My father, James, was a meticulous accountant, always balancing the books for local businesses. My mother, Diane, worked at a bank handling loans with a smile that won over clients. My older brother, Kyle, was the golden child, showered with attention and gifts. Then there was me, the kid who got hand-me-downs and a pat on the head if I was lucky. I was different from Kyle. By 12, I taught myself how to budget my allowance, stretching every dollar. I'd sit in my room scribbling numbers in a notebook, figuring out how to save for a new bike. In high school, I joined the finance club and won first place in a statewide financial analysis competition, presenting a plan to optimize a small business's cash flow. My parents barely noticed. "That's nice, honey," my mother said, distracted while handing Kyle a new phone. He'd crashed his car again, and they bought him another without a word. Kyle could do no wrong. He'd stumble home late, reeking of beer with a C-average report card, and my father would just shrug. "Boys will be boys," he'd say, ruffling Kyle's hair. Meanwhile, my straight-A grades and scholarship offers were met with nods and quick subject changes. I built a simple app to track personal expenses, coding it myself on an old laptop. My parents didn't even ask to see it. Kyle got a new gaming console that same week. The gap between us grew every year. Kyle's new clothes filled his closet. I wore thrift store finds. He got a shiny SUV for his birthday. I took the bus to school. My mother once said Kyle needs more support. He's got big dreams. I'd stare at my worn-out sneakers, wondering what my dreams were worth to them. I pushed myself harder, determined to prove I didn't need their approval. I spent hours studying investment strategies, reading books on wealth management, dreaming of a future where I'd call the shots. My parents' house was always buzzing with Kyle's friends, their laughter echoing through the halls. I'd sit quietly at the dinner table, listening to my father praise Kyle's potential while my mother planned his next big opportunity. My achievements, like landing a partial scholarship to Grand Valley State University, barely registered. "That's great," my father said once, eyes on his phone. Kyle's latest party got more attention than my acceptance letter. I wasn't jealous, not exactly. I just wanted them to see me. I'd show them my finance club awards, hoping for a spark of pride. Instead, my mother would say, "Don't worry about money so much, Brooke." But I had to. Nobody else was going to. Kyle's reckless spending, new gadgets, weekend trips never seemed to bother them. They'd bail him out every time, no questions asked. I learned early to rely on myself, saving every penny from my part-time tutoring job. Looking back, I see the pattern. Kyle was the star, the one they bet on. I was the backup, expected to fend for myself. It stung, but it fueled me. I wasn't going to beg for their attention. I'd make my own way, no matter what it took. That fire kept me going even when I felt invisible in my own home. My junior year of college, my dream nearly shattered when my scholarship got cut. I was studying finance at Grand Valley State University, a solid public school in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My scholarship covered half my tuition, a lifeline that made my degree possible. Without it, I was staring at a $10,000 bill for the year. My heart sank as I read the email from the financial aid office. Budget cuts meant my funding was gone. I had no safety net. I called my mother first. "Mom, I need help with tuition," I said, gripping the phone. "It's $10,000. Her voice was flat. "We don't have that kind of money, Brooke." I tried my father next. "Dad, please. I can't lose this," I pleaded. He sighed. "You'll figure it out." Their words stung, but I wasn't surprised. I'd always been the one to fend for myself. To stay in school, I took on 2 jobs. Mornings, I waited tables at a diner near campus, dodging rude customers for meager tips. Evenings, I worked as an office assistant in the economics department, filing papers and answering emails. My days started at 6 and ended past midnight. I lived off instant noodles, brewed coffee in a secondhand pot, and crammed into a tiny dorm room with a leaky window. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. The stress was relentless. I'd sit in lectures fighting to stay awake, my notebook filled with budget calculations instead of notes. I applied for student loans, filling out endless forms to cover what my jobs couldn't. The debt piled up, a heavy weight on my shoulders. I'd lie awake at night wondering if I'd ever dig myself out. My grades slipped, but I clawed my way back, studying in the library until it closed. Professor Linda Marsh noticed my struggle. She taught my investments class and saw me nodding off during a lecture. After class, she pulled me aside. "Brooke, you're one of my best students," she said. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then spilled everything: my scholarship, the jobs, the loans. Her face softened. She helped me apply for an emergency grant from the university, navigating the paperwork with me. The grant came through, but it was only $1,000, barely a dent in my tuition bill. I kept pushing forward, driven by a stubborn need to prove I could do this. I cut every expense, skipping meals to save a few bucks. My classmates went to parties. I went to work. They bought new textbooks. I borrowed old ones from the library. Every dollar I earned went to tuition or rent. I'd walk past the campus coffee shop smelling pastries I couldn't buy and tell myself it was temporary. My parents never checked in. I sent them emails about my classes, hoping for a response. Nothing. I called once more, desperate, thinking they might reconsider. "We're tight on funds," my mother said, her voice clipped. I didn't bother calling again. My brother, meanwhile, was living at home, spending freely. I heard from a cousin he'd been to Vegas betting big. My stomach churned, but I pushed it down. I had to focus on surviving. Professor Marsh became my anchor. She'd slip me study guides or extend deadlines when I was swamped. "You're tougher than you realize," she told me one day, handing me a coffee. I clung to those words. They were the only encouragement I got. My loans grew, my shifts got longer, and my dorm felt smaller every day. But I refused to quit. I was going to graduate no matter what it took. That Thanksgiving, I returned to Grand Rapids, hoping to mend some family ties. I'd been drowning in college debt and exhaustion, but I wanted to believe we could still be a family. The house smelled of turkey and stuffing, the table set with my mother's best china. I forced a smile, sitting across from Kyle, who was joking loudly with my father. But something felt off. My parents kept exchanging glances, their voices hushed when they thought I wasn't listening. After dinner, I lingered in the hallway, grabbing a glass of water. That's when I heard them in the kitchen. My mother's voice was low, tense. "We had to use the trust fund, James. Kyle was in too deep." My father murmured agreement. It was the only way to save him. I froze, my heart pounding. Trust fund. My grandfather had left money for both of us, me and Kyle, to secure our futures. $100,000 split evenly. I leaned closer, my breath shallow. He owed the casino everything, my mother whispered. We couldn't let him drown in gambling debt. My stomach twisted. They'd used my share, my future, to bail out Kyle's reckless bets. I stormed into the living room, my hands shaking. "Mom, Dad, what's this about the trust fund?" I demanded, my voice sharp. They froze, faces pale. Kyle slouched on the couch, avoiding my eyes. My mother recovered first, smoothing her apron. "Brooke, you don't understand," she said, her tone defensive. Kyle needed help. His gambling got out of control. I stared, disbelief burning in my chest. "So you took my money? Grandpa's money for both of us." My father looked away, silent, his jaw tight. "Why didn't you tell me?" I pressed, stepping closer. My mother sighed, folding her arms. "We didn't want to worry you. You're doing fine at school." Fine. I was killing myself with 2 jobs and loans to pay tuition they refused to help with. "You said you had no money for my tuition," I said, my voice rising. $10,000, and you told me to figure it out. "But you had $100,000 for Kyle's gambling." My mother flinched, but her eyes hardened. "Kyle needed saving more than you did," she said. "You're strong." "He's not." I turned to my father, desperate for him to speak. "Dad, you agreed to this?" He shifted uncomfortably, muttering. It was a family decision. A family decision that left me out. Kyle finally spoke, his voice low. "I didn't ask them to do it, Brooke." But his words felt hollow. He'd taken the money, my money, and let me struggle. I laughed, bitter and cold. "You all lied to me. You chose him over me." The room grew tense, the air thick with unspoken truths. I paced, my mind racing. "Grandpa wanted that money for our futures," I said, my voice breaking. "I could have paid for college, started my life without debt. But you gave it all to Kyle, knowing he'd waste it." My mother stepped forward, reaching for my arm. "Brooke, we had no choice," she said. I pulled away. "You had a choice. You chose to hide it from me." I looked at Kyle, his head bowed, and felt nothing but anger. "You knew about this, didn't you?" I asked. He didn't answer. My father finally spoke, his voice weak. "We thought we were protecting you both." Protecting. They'd robbed me of my share, my security, to fix Kyle's mess. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. "You didn't protect me. You betrayed me." I grabbed my coat from the chair, my hands trembling. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "I don't need a family that lies to me." My mother called after me. "Brooke, wait." But I walked out the door, slamming behind me. I drove back to campus that night, my heart heavy but resolute. I wasn't going back. Not ever. They'd made their choice, and I'd make mine. After Thanksgiving, I left Grand Rapids and vanished from my family's lives. The sting of their betrayal, using my grandfather's trust fund for my brother's gambling debts, pushed me to cut all ties. I was done begging for their support. I graduated from Grand Valley State University in 2016, my finance degree hard-earned through sleepless nights and mounting loans. With nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn will, I moved to Chicago, determined to make my mark. I landed a job at a mid-sized financial firm analyzing investment portfolios. The work was grueling, long hours, endless spreadsheets, but I soaked up every detail. I studied market trends on my breaks, scribbling ideas for better strategies. My colleagues noticed my hustle, and my boss gave me a small project to lead. I nailed it, saving a client thousands with a sharper investment plan. That win lit a spark. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. In Chicago, I met Stacy Grant, a graphic designer with a sharp mind and a warm laugh. We clicked instantly over coffee, bonding over our dreams of breaking free from our pasts. Stacy became my rock, the friend who listened when I vented about my family's lies. One night over pizza in her cramped apartment, she said, "Brooke, you're a genius with numbers. Why not start your own company?" Her words stuck. I'd always dreamed of running my own show, but her belief in me made it feel possible. I took the leap. In a tiny studio apartment, I launched my financial consulting business. My desk was a second-hand table, my office a corner by the window. I spent nights crafting pitches, cold calling small businesses, offering tailored investment advice. My first client, a local bakery, doubled their profits in 6 months with my strategies. Word spread. Soon I had a roster of clients from startups to family-owned shops. My business grew fueled by my knack for spotting market gaps and my refusal to quit. Stacy was there every step, designing my logo and cheering me on. When I doubted myself, she'd say, "You've got this, Brooke. You're unstoppable." Her encouragement kept me grounded, but the pain of my family's betrayal lingered. I started seeing Dr. Carolyn Hart, a therapist recommended by a colleague. In her quiet office, I unraveled the hurt: how my parents chose my brother over me, how I felt invisible. Dr. Hart listened, guiding me to see my strength. "You're not defined by their choices," she said. "You're building your own legacy." Those sessions helped me let go of the anger, focusing on what I could control. By 2021, my company was thriving. I'd hired a small team, moved to a proper office, and caught the eye of a struggling financial firm in Grand Rapids. They were on the brink of collapse, mismanaged and bleeding cash. I saw potential. Using every dollar I'd saved, I bought them out, keeping my identity quiet. I restructured their operations, streamlined their investments, and turned their losses into profits. Within a year, I was the CEO of a company I'd rebuilt from the ground up. I never reached out to my family. They didn't know I'd left Grand Rapids, let alone become a CEO. Stacy would tease, "You're a secret mogul, Brooke." I'd laugh, but part of me ached. I'd wanted my parents to see my success, to regret their choices. Dr. Hart helped me reframe that pain. "Your success isn't for them," she said. "It's for you." She was right. I'd built this life on my own terms, proving I didn't need their approval. My company's Grand Rapids branch became my proudest achievement. I walked its halls, leading meetings with confidence I'd earned through years of grit. Clients trusted my advice, employees respected my vision, and I felt a freedom I'd never known. I'd turned betrayal into triumph, not because of my family, but despite them. A few years after I left, news about my family reached me through an old friend in Grand Rapids. I was in Chicago running my consulting firm, finally building a life on solid ground. But when my phone buzzed with a message from a former classmate, my past came rushing back. She didn't soften the blow. Kyle had crashed spectacularly, and my parents were paying the price. Kyle had fallen deep into a cryptocurrency scam. It started innocently enough. He'd always chased quick wins, a habit my parents enabled. Soon, he became obsessed, sinking every dollar of his savings into a shady online platform that promised massive returns. He bragged to friends about becoming a crypto millionaire, flashing screenshots of fake profits. But the platform was a fraud, one of those Ponzi schemes that collapsed overnight. Kyle lost everything: his savings, his car loan payments, even the rent on his apartment. Desperate, he borrowed heavily from questionable lenders, racking up debts he couldn't repay. In the end, he was broke, his credit ruined, and his part-time job at a car dealership gone after missing too many shifts. My parents stepped in just as they always had. They couldn't bear to see their golden child fail. My friend told me they had sold their house in Grand Rapids, the very house I grew up in, filled with memories of family dinners and childhood dreams. It wasn't a mansion, but it was theirs, a symbol of stability. They managed to get a decent price, but every cent went toward Kyle's debts. The lenders were relentless, hounding them for payments. Eventually, my parents moved into a cramped one-bedroom rental on the edge of town, a far cry from their old suburban home. My mother, once a proud bank employee, now worked part-time as a cashier. My father, the meticulous accountant, picked up freelance bookkeeping gigs, his confidence shaken. I heard all this over coffee with my friend, who had run into my mother at a grocery store. "Diane looked exhausted," she said. "She asked about you, Brooke." But I didn't know what to say. I nodded, stirring my drink, my chest tight. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but the sting of their betrayal still burned. They had chosen Kyle over me, used my grandfather's trust fund to bail him out, and now they were cleaning up another of his disasters. I had warned them years ago during that Thanksgiving fight that Kyle's recklessness would ruin them. They hadn't listened. Kyle, meanwhile, hadn't learned a thing. My friend said he was still chasing get-rich-quick schemes, borrowing money from old classmates, promising to pay them back big with his next crypto venture. He had moved back in with my parents, sleeping on a pull-out couch in their tiny apartment. His charm, once enough to win people over, was wearing thin. Friends stopped answering his calls, tired of his excuses. He had burned every bridge, leaving my parents to carry the fallout. I sat back, processing it all. My life in Chicago was the opposite. My company was thriving, my clients were succeeding, and my bank account was stable. I had built that from nothing, no trust fund, no family support. Hearing about Kyle's collapse didn't surprise me. He had always been reckless, propped up by my parents' blind faith. But learning they had sold the house hit harder than I expected. I remembered my mother's garden, my father's old desk in the study. Gone, sacrificed to fix Kyle's mistakes. I could have reached out. I had the means to help, to send money or offer advice. But I didn't. They had made their choice years ago, prioritizing Kyle's chaos over my future. I had begged for $10,000 to stay in college. They gave Kyle 10 times that for gambling. Now they were living the consequences. I felt a pang of guilt, but it faded quickly. I had fought too hard to let their mess pull me back in. My friend asked if I'd ever go back to Grand Rapids, maybe talk to them. I shook my head. They're not my family anymore, I said, my voice steady. That decision, made after Thanksgiving, had never wavered. Their downfall only cemented it. I had built my life without them, and I wasn't turning back now. One April morning, I walked into my company's branch in Grand Rapids. The office hummed with activity, my team busy with client portfolios. I'd built this place from a failing firm into a thriving business, and stepping through its doors always filled me with pride. But that day, everything changed. Judy Blake, our receptionist, caught me at the front desk, her voice hesitant. "Brooke, there's a woman here asking for her daughter. She says it's you." I froze, my heart racing. I stepped into the lobby, and there she was, my mother Diane, standing awkwardly in a worn coat. Her face was lined, her eyes tired, nothing like the confident bank employee I'd known growing up. She didn't know I owned this company, that I was the CEO. To her, I was still the daughter who'd walked out after Thanksgiving years ago. "Mom," I said, my voice steady but cold. Her eyes widened, searching my face. "Brooke, I didn't know you worked here." I straightened, my resolve hardening. "I don't just work here. I'm the CEO." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Diane's jaw dropped, her hands clutching her purse. Judy glanced between us, unsure what to do. I nodded at her to leave, and she slipped away. Diane stammered, "CEO, how? When did this happen?" I didn't owe her an explanation, but the truth spilled out. I built this company from nothing. No help from you, Dad, or that trust fund you gave to Kyle. Her face crumpled. She stepped closer, her voice pleading. "Brooke, I came to find you. We made mistakes. I know we hurt you." I held up a hand, stopping her. "Mistakes? You lied to me. You took my future to save Kyle's gambling debts." She flinched, tears welling. "We thought we were doing what was best," she said. "Kyle was in trouble. We couldn't let him fall." I laughed, the sound bitter. "But you let me fall. I begged for help with college. You said there was no money." Diane reached out, her hand trembling. "I'm sorry, Brooke. I want to make things right." I stepped back out of her reach. "You can't. I clawed my way here without you. I don't need you now." The words cut, but they were true. I'd spent years rebuilding myself, leaning on friends like Stacy and Dr. Hart, not my family. Diane's eyes darted around the sleek office as if seeing me for the first time. "You've done so well?" she whispered. I had no idea. Before I could respond, Denise Clark, my HR manager, walked in holding a tablet. "Brooke, is everything okay?" she asked, eyeing Diane. I nodded, seizing the moment. "Denise, this is Diane, my mother. Can you confirm who I am for her?" Denise raised an eyebrow but complied. This is Brooke Lawson, our CEO. She owns this company and our Chicago headquarters. Diane's face paled further, the reality sinking in. She looked at me, searching for something, forgiveness maybe. She wouldn't find it. I didn't come to fight, Diane said softly. I just wanted to see you, to know you're okay. I crossed my arms, my voice firm. I'm more than okay. I'm thriving. And I did it despite you. She opened her mouth, then closed it, tears spilling down her cheeks. I felt a pang in my chest, but it wasn't enough to sway me. You chose Kyle over me, I said. You don't get to walk in here and act like that didn't happen. Diane stood there silent, her shoulders slumped. I love you, Brooke, she said finally, her voice breaking. I didn't answer. I'd heard enough promises, enough excuses. I turned to Denise. Please show her out. Denise nodded gently, guiding Diane toward the door. My mother looked back, her eyes pleading, but I held her gaze unwavering. The door closed behind her and the office went quiet. I stood there, my hands shaking but my heart steady. I'd faced her and walked away stronger. This was my life now, built on my terms, and no one, not even my mother, could take that from me. After meeting my mother, I realized I'd found true freedom. That moment in my Grand Rapids office, watching her walk away, solidified my resolve. I wasn't the daughter who needed her approval anymore. I was Brooke Lawson, CEO, someone who'd built a life from the ashes of betrayal. My company continued to grow, expanding its reach across Michigan and Illinois. I poured my energy into new projects driven by a purpose bigger than myself. One of those projects was a scholarship fund for struggling students in Michigan. I remembered my own college days, scraping by on instant noodles and student loans after my scholarship was cut. No one deserved that fight alone. I named the fund Horizon Scholars, offering full tuition to 10 students a year at Grand Valley State University. At the first award ceremony, I met a recipient, a shy freshman studying engineering. This changes everything, she told me, her eyes bright with hope. I smiled, knowing I'd given her the chance my parents never gave me. That moment felt like closure, a way to rewrite my past by helping others. I heard updates about my family through mutual acquaintances. My mother, Diane, and my father, James, were still in their cramped Grand Rapids apartment, scraping by on low-paying jobs. My mother worked late shifts at a grocery store, her pride worn down by years of bailing out my brother. My father shuffled between freelance gigs, his accounting skills underused in a market that demanded more. Their lives had shrunk, tethered to the consequences of their choices. Kyle, my brother, hadn't changed. He'd doubled down on his gambling, chasing new crypto schemes after his last failure. A former classmate told me he'd tried launching a blockchain startup only to lose more money to another scam. He was still living with my parents, borrowing cash from anyone who'd listen, his promises of quick riches falling flat. I felt no satisfaction hearing this, only a quiet confirmation that I'd been right to walk away. Their downfall was their own, not mine. I thought about reaching out, especially to my mother. Her tearful plea in my office lingered in my mind, but every time I considered it, I remembered the trust fund they'd taken, the lies they'd told, the way they'd chosen Kyle over me. Forgiveness wasn't my burden to carry. I'd built a life without them, and I didn't need their regret to feel whole. My choice to stay distant wasn't about anger anymore. It was about protecting my peace. My happiness came from the people I chose to keep close. Stacy Grant, my best friend, was my anchor. We'd spend weekends exploring Chicago, laughing over shared meals, planning new ventures. She'd designed the logo for Horizon Scholars, her creativity bringing my vision to life. You're changing the world, Brooke, she'd say, her grin infectious. My team at the company, from analysts to managers, became a kind of family, one built on trust and shared goals. We celebrated wins together, like landing a major client or hitting revenue milestones. Looking back, my journey taught me a truth I'd carry forever. Self-reliance is the key to freedom. The unfairness I faced, my parents' favoritism, the stolen trust fund, the struggle to survive college, didn't break me. It forged me. I learned that you don't need others' validation to thrive. You don't need a perfect family to find meaning. You build your own path brick by brick, and that's where true strength lies. I stood at my office window one evening watching the city lights. Chicago had become my home, a place where I'd turned pain into purpose. I thought of the students my scholarship would lift up, the clients my company would empower, the life I'd created without looking back. My family's choices had once defined my struggle, but they no longer defined me. I was free, not because they'd set me free, but because I'd chosen to let go.